In Pakistan, more than 40,000 people have reportedly fled the Swat Valley following clashes between Pakistani and Taliban forces. Both sides are blaming the other for the breakdown of a truce in the region. Despite the fighting, Pakistani officials say they've rescinded an evacuation order because they don't plan to launch a new military offensive. Pakistani troops have been battling Taliban fighters in 2 districts bordering Swat. The unrest comes as Pakistani leaders are in Washington for meetings at the White House. Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari is set to meet President Obama later today. Testifying before Congress, Obama's special envoy on Pakistan and Afghanistan, Richard Holbrooke, said the U.S. is fully backing Zardari.
Pakistan is of immense importance to the United States strategically and politically, that our goal must be unambiguously to support and help stabilize a democratic Pakistan, headed by its elected president, Asif Ali Zardari. We do not think Pakistan is a failed state. We think it's a state under extreme test from the enemies who are also our enemies. And we have, Mr. Chairman, the same common enemy.
Iran, government officials have apparently forced the jailed Iranian-American reporter Roxana Saberi to drop a group of prominent lawyers, including the Nobel laureate Shirin Ebadi. Saberi was sentenced last month to 8 years in prison after being convicted of spying for the United States. Her father says she's ended a 2-week hunger strike protesting her imprisonment. On Tuesday, the Iranian judiciary said it would review Saberi's conviction shortly after her family announced it would not retain Ebadi and the other attorneys. You can go to our website at democracynow.org to hear our exclusive national broadcast with Shirin Ebadi when we were in Austin, Texas last week. In Mexico, a journalist who warned of threats on his life by government officials has been shot to death. 52-year-old Carlos Ortega Samper was killed one day after his warnings were published. He was shot 3 times by unidentified assailants in the northern state of Durango. President Obama has unveiled a $63 billion proposal for new global health spending over the next 6 years. Obama says he'll expand on U.S. funding for AIDS programs to also focus on tropical diseases and other treatable and preventable illnesses. Several AIDS advocacy groups are criticizing the proposal, saying Obama has backtracked on a pledge to increase AIDS funding by $1 billion a year. The National Bar Association for Immigration Lawyers is calling on the Justice Department to drop charges against undocumented workers swept up in a raid on an Iowa meatpacking plant last year. Nearly 400 workers were detained at the agri-processors plant in Postville, Iowa, making it one of the largest raids in U.S. history. On Tuesday, the American Immigration Lawyers Association said the charges should be dropped following this week's Supreme Court ruling on identity theft. On Monday, the court ruled prosecutors must prove an undocumented worker knew false identity papers belonged to another real person. Maine has moved a step closer to legalizing same-sex marriage. On Tuesday, the Maine House voted 89 to 57 to allow gay marriage in the state, following a similar vote by the state Senate last week. Both chambers will each hold one more vote on the bill before sending it to the Democratic Governor John Baldacci. Baldacci has previously opposed gay marriage but isn't expected to issue a veto. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the city councils again voted to recognize same-sex marriages performed in other states following a similar vote last month. D.C. Mayor Adrian Fenty is expected to sign the measure, setting up a likely showdown with Congress, which approves D.C.'s laws under home rule. The Pentagon's Inspector General's office has withdrawn a report that exonerated military leaders for a propaganda program ahead of the Iraq War. Beginning in 2002, the Pentagon recruited more than 75 retired military officers to appear on TV outlets as so-called military analysts to portray Iraq as an urgent threat. In January, the Pentagon's Inspector General dismissed allegations the program violated laws barring propaganda and rejected reports showing the analysts used their Pentagon access to win government contracts for defense companies. On Tuesday, the Pentagon admitted the report was flawed and even removed it from its website. And the Boston Globe has reached a tentative agreement with its largest union. amidst threats of the newspaper's closure. The New York Times Company had threatened to close the Globe within 60 days if workers did not agree to a series of major financial and contract concessions. The Newspaper Guild says the deal will ensure the Globe's continued publication. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Senator John Kerry is set to hold a hearing today on the future of newspapers. Among those who will testify are Arianna Huffington of the Huffington Post and David Simon of The Wire. Also Steve Cole, the former managing editor of The Washington Post. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.